There's a unique kind of heartbreak that happens when a good woman gets hurt. One who loved deeply, gave fully, and stayed loyal even when it wasn't easy. She didn't play games. She wasn't pretending to be hard to get. She just showed up with her whole heart. And when a man takes that kind of love for granted, the universe takes note. Because karma doesn't always arrive with thunder and lightning. It often walks in quietly, through regret, missed chances, and the realization of what he lost when he mistook her softness for weakness. This isn't about revenge. It's about what happens when truth balances out the choices people make. And for the woman who was hurt, this isn't the end of her story. It's the beginning of a more powerful one. When a man hurts a good woman, the first thing that starts to shift, often silently and beneath the surface, is her energy. The woman he once knew begins to disappear, not because she's trying to punish him, but because the wound she carries changes her. At first, she's confused. She plays the moments back in her mind, questioning what she said, what she did, how she could have shown up better. She tries to understand how someone she trusted could treat her so careless. But in the middle of that storm, a quiet realization starts to form. She begins to see that it wasn't her fault, that her heart wasn't the problem, that she was giving to someone who wasn't capable or ready to receive the depth of love she offered. What he doesn't realize, though, is that while she's hurting, something powerful is growing inside her. A shift, a rebuild. At first, it looks like silence. She doesn't text, she doesn't chase, she doesn't beg for clarity or closure. She just stops. And in that silence, she starts to reclaim herself. The woman who once waited on him to show up, to communicate, to choose her with the same conviction she chose him, stops waiting. She begins turning inward. And that's the part that karma pays attention to. See, karma doesn't just respond to pain, it responds to how you handle it. And when a good woman chooses dignity over drama, healing over hostility, she steps into a kind of power that most people don't expect. She doesn't broadcast her hurt all over the place. She doesn't light his name on fire. She simply starts walking in a new direction. One that doesn't include chasing anyone who made her question her worth. That's when the tables quietly start to turn. He may think she'll always be there, that because she forgave once or 10 times, she'll do it again. But every woman has a threshold, and when that line gets crossed, it's not her anger he needs to fear, it's her absence. The energy she once poured into him, the love she tried so hard to protect, begins pouring back into herself. She starts glowing differently, laughing louder, living without hesitation, and suddenly, the woman he thought would always be available isn't. That's where regret begins to haunt him, not because she's doing anything to get back at him, but because the contrast becomes undeniable. When he sees her move on without bitterness, when he watches her become even more radiant, more grounded, more secure, he remembers the messages she used to send, the softness in her voice, the way she believed in him, even when he didn't believe in himself. He remembers her loyalty, how rare it was. And that's when he begins to realize he broke something beautiful, not just in her, but in the connection they had. Karma starts with that inner burn, the one where he scrolls through her photos and instead of finding someone broken, he sees someone better. Not in comparison to others, but in contrast to who she was when he had her. And what stings the most is knowing he contributed to that change. Not because she wanted to evolve that way, but because she had to. Pain was the catalyst. He was the trigger. But the transformation, that was all her. He may reach out eventually, trying to revisit what they had. But what he doesn't understand is that she's not angry anymore. She's just unavailable. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually, she's moved on. Not to punish him, but to protect herself. And that's when karma completes the circle, when he wants to come back, but she no longer opens the door, not because she's holding a grudge, but because she learnt, she grew, and she won't shrink back down just to fit into the same small space where she once lost herself. There's something incredibly haunting about losing access to someone who once loved you deeply and unconditionally. In the beginning, when a man hurts a good woman, he doesn't always feel the weight of what he's done right away. He assumes she'll still be there, emotionally tethered to him, holding space for his return. He banks on the connection they shared, thinking it buys him time or multiple chances. He underestimates the power of a woman who learns to stop begging for love she deserves and starts reclaiming her peace instead. In the aftermath of the hurt, she may be quiet, she may seem like she's just processing, waiting, healing, but what he doesn't see is the subtle but powerful emotional detachment that starts to take root. A woman doesn't always slam the door when she's done. Sometimes she simply stops opening it. Her energy shifts, her heart closes, not out of spite, but out of protection. And the man who once lived in the center of her world now finds himself on the outside looking in. But at first it doesn't hit him. He's distracted, detached, thinking she's still orbiting around the fantasy of what they had. But then she does something different. She stops reacting. She doesn't respond to the bait of his attention crumbs. She doesn't chase explanations. She no longer justifies his behavior to her friends or herself. She stops rewriting his coldness as he's just busy. And that subtle withdrawal, that unspoken detachment, is what begins to echo in his mind. You see, the most powerful kind of karma isn't loud or dramatic. It's not fireworks or revenge. It's reflection. It's the slow, creeping realization that he lost something irreplaceable. He starts to notice the difference when he talks to other women and doesn't feel the same depth, when he texts her and sees no response, when he checks her social media and realizes her glow has nothing to do with him anymore. And that's when it starts to eat at him. He'll remember the emotional safety she gave him, the way she supported him even when she was hurting, the way she tried to understand his moods, his silence, his fear of vulnerability. He'll remember her patience, her softness, the warmth of her presence that made him feel more grounded just by being around her. And now that comfort is gone, not stolen, not taken away in anger, but no longer available because he made her feel unsafe to stay. The hardest truth for him to face is not that she's happy now, it's that she's happy without him. That the light in her smile no longer belongs to the story they shared. That someone else might get the version of her he once had access to and didn't know how to appreciate. And that's when his ego starts to crumble. Because deep down, he thought she would wait. He thought he could hurt her and that she'd still be emotionally tethered to him. He never considered the possibility that she might love herself enough to let him go completely. The emotional detachment she now walks with isn't coldness, it's clarity. And that clarity is what drives the deepest cut. Not for her, but for him. Because now he sees what he cost himself. He sees that it wasn't just a breakup, it was the loss of a woman who had his back, who believed in him when it wasn't easy, who would have fought for them if he had only met her halfway. That's the pain that lingers. That's the ache that doesn't fade. Not because she wants revenge, but because he finally understands the value of what he let go at the exact moment it's no longer his to have. It often takes losing something real to realize its worth. When a man hurts a good woman, he rarely grasps the weight of that action in the moment. There's a dangerous comfort in believing someone's love is unconditional, that they'll always be there, no matter what. He might not notice it right away, but the universe has a way of bringing balance. And one of the most profound lessons it teaches is what it feels like to be on the other side of the pain he caused. Eventually, he finds himself in a new connection, maybe someone fresh, exciting, a relationship that distracts him from the emptiness he created. He tells himself this time it's different, better, easier, but deep down something starts to feel off. He tries to replicate the emotional intimacy he once had, but it doesn't land the same. He attempts to be vulnerable, but realizes he's not being met with the same level of depth. And without realizing it, he begins to compare, not out of nostalgia, but out of absence. He's not looking for the past. He's looking for what used to make him feel seen, understood, accepted. That's when karma really begins its work. Not by punishing him, but by reflecting him. He starts to see his own flaws mirrored back in ways that force him to confront what he did. Maybe the person he's with now lacks the patience she had. Maybe she doesn't ask about his dreams, doesn't care to listen the way that good woman once did. Maybe now he feels misunderstood, unseen, like he has to explain himself constantly. The very things he took for granted start to become glaringly obvious through the lens of contrast. But karma doesn't stop there. The universe doesn't just show him what he lost, it makes him feel it. He begins to miss the little things he didn't think mattered, the way she instinctively knew when something was wrong, how she gave space without abandoning, how she challenged him, but in a way that made him better. The emotional maturity, the loyalty, the unspoken way she cared for him when he couldn't even care for himself. And now, in this new space, that kind of love is absent. He starts to realize that love wasn't about convenience or chemistry, it was about intention. And she had that. She brought it consistently, while he hesitated, held back, or even worse, dismissed it altogether. As time goes on, he might reach out, test the waters, try to reignite what he once extinguished. But the energy has shifted. She doesn't respond with warmth anymore. She's not cruel, but she's not clinging either. She's not angry, but she's no longer emotionally available. He feels the distance that wasn't there before, and it confuses him, because the version of her that would have dropped everything for his message no longer exists. She grew past him. She evolved from needing his attention to valuing her peace more. This is where the deepest part of karma unfolds. It's not about watching her suffer, it's watching her thrive without him. It's seeing her laugh again, glow again, love again, and know with certainty that he no longer plays a role in any of it. He becomes a ghost in a chapter she doesn't reread. And that emptiness he thought he'd never feel, it becomes loud in his quiet moments. That longing he used to dismiss in her is now something he wrestles with every time he remembers the softness in her voice, the strength in her loyalty, the way she never asked for more than what she gave. He learns the hardest way possible. Not every woman is replaceable, and not every love comes twice. There's a certain kind of heartbreak that doesn't announce itself with tears or outbursts. It shows up in silence, in the way she no longer checks her phone for his name, no longer rereads their old messages, no longer imagines what could have been. That silence is her healing. And that healing, ironically, becomes the loudest thing in his life. Because when she finally lets go, not out of anger, but out of self-respect, everything changes and the dynamic flips. The power she once gave away by caring too deeply, by forgiving too quickly, is now reclaimed. And it's in that space, that emotional detachment, that karma speaks the clearest. When a good woman finally detaches, it's not done impulsively. She gives chances. She has hard conversations. She holds space even when it hurts. She tries to understand before walking away. So when she eventually does walk, it means she's already grieved the loss. She's already mourned the version of him she believed in. By the time he realizes she's gone, she's already rebuilt herself. That absence he once didn't fear now feels like a void, because she no longer gives the parts of herself that he once took for granted. No more late-night talks, no more emotional labor, no more showing up with love while he offered confusion. And he begins to notice her peace, not just as something she's found, but something she's chosen over him. This is what hits hardest. Her life didn't fall apart without him. It got better. She glows in her freedom. She laughs differently. She smiles with her eyes again. And he sees it on social media, through mutual friends, or in his memories. The woman who used to shrink herself just to be digestible for him is now standing tall, unbothered, and unapologetic. That's when regret starts to brew. Not because he wants to love her better now, but because he finally sees what he lost. And what makes it worse, she doesn't want him back. He may try to return, to check in, to say, "I miss you," but the version of her who would have softened at those words is gone. She's learned that love without consistency isn't love at all. She's learned that apologies without changed behavior are a manipulation. She doesn't hate him, she just doesn't need him. And for a man who once believed her love was unconditional, that realization is earth-shattering. Her detachment becomes his lesson. He learns what real presence looks like by feeling the weight of her absence. He understands the value of being chosen when she no longer chooses him. And he starts to question everything. Why he didn't show up, why he played games, why he assumed she'd always be there. That mental spiral becomes his karma, because while he's stuck in what could have been, she's fully present in what is. It's not revenge. It's not bitterness, it's evolution. And in that evolution, she teaches him something no argument or tear ever could. When a woman chooses herself, she becomes untouchable. Not because she's cold, but because she finally sees her worth so clearly she refuses to ever settle again. And that clarity, that's the karma he never saw coming. There's a certain irony in how people realize the value of something only when it's no longer accessible. When a good woman is no longer available to absorb the blows, to listen without judgment, to forgive without conditions, that's when the man who hurt her starts to feel the weight of his actions. For a long time, he thought she would always be there, maybe not physically, but emotionally. He thought he could come and go, that her heart would always have space for him. But what he didn't realize is that every time he mistreated her, she was slowly closing the doors to her soul. She wasn't slamming them shut, she was just learning. He notices the change, not because she made a dramatic exit, but because she stopped reacting. She stopped answering texts instantly. She stopped asking where things were going. She stopped trying to fix what he kept breaking. And what unnerves him the most is that her silence isn't cold, it's calm. It's composed. It's the kind of silence that comes from knowing you've done everything you could. And when that silence becomes her norm, he feels the shift. He feels it in her detachment, in her peace, in the way she no longer tries to earn what should have been freely given. As she starts rebuilding, he finds himself stuck, not because he can't move on, but because every woman he meets after her lacks something. They might have the look, they might even be fun for a while, but there's a depth missing, a certain emotional intelligence, a presence. He tries to distract himself, to convince himself that he made the right choice or that she was too much. But that voice in the back of his mind won't let him forget the way she made him feel safe, the way she believed in him when he didn't believe in himself. No one else offers that combination of strength and softness. That kind of magic doesn't come around twice. He sees her out there, living. Maybe she's glowing, maybe she's traveling, maybe she's finally doing things she put off while trying to make him her priority, and he realizes something important. She's not trying to prove anything to him. She's not posting to get his attention. She's simply being, and that self-contained glow, that unapologetic happiness, it hits him harder than any angry message or tearful plea ever could, because now he knows she's no longer performing pain. She's past it. And that's what truly scares him. He starts to reflect not just on what he did, but on what he failed to do. The calls he didn't return, the promises he broke, the way he minimized her emotions when all she wanted was to feel seen. And it's that emotional inventory that becomes his punishment. He doesn't need her to curse him or wish him harm. His own memories are enough. His own regret becomes the echo that follows him. And in his mind, she becomes the standard, not just because she was good to him, but because she challenged him to be better. And now that she's gone, he sees that he didn't just lose a woman, he lost his mirror, the person who held up a reflection of who he could have been if he had just shown up. That kind of loss lingers. It stays with a man in quiet moments, and no matter how many distractions he tries to drown it in, there's a part of him that knows when he hurt her, he didn't just break her heart. He broke his own future. There's a power in grace that most people overlook, especially the ones who cause the damage. When a good woman is hurt, people expect her to break down, to lash out, to spiral. But when she doesn't, when she chooses to rise with quiet elegance instead, it shakes something deep in the man who caused her pain. That grace, that calm evolution after chaos, becomes the loudest statement she could ever make. Tells the world and him that her identity was never defined by the person who broke her. He watches from a distance as she handles her healing with dignity. No social media rants, no desperate messages, no public displays of bitterness. Instead, she simply continues. She invests in herself. She surrounds herself with people who make her feel seen, loved, appreciated. She starts doing the things she once put aside in the name of love, whether it's pursuing a new goal, changing environments, or just reclaiming her time. He doesn't do it to make him jealous. She does it because her focus has shifted. It's no longer on proving her worth to someone who couldn't recognize it. It's on living in a way that finally reflects how valuable she truly is. And he feels that loss in waves, not because she's out of reach, but because she left without needing closure from him. That's the part that stings the most. He expected a breakdown, a begging, maybe even a dramatic plea for explanation. Instead, she walked away with her head high and her heart guarded. And her silence, wrapped in self-respect, echoes louder than any fight they could have had. He realizes that in a world where people overshare pain, her refusal to make her suffering a performance is rare and unforgettable. Time passes and she only gets stronger. She becomes more magnetic, more sure of herself. And that energy starts drawing people in. People who see her not as someone who needs fixing, but as someone worth cherishing. That shift in dynamic is humbling for the man who hurt her, because while he's out there trying to replicate the connection, all he finds are shallow echoes of what they once had. He sees her stepping into her power, clearer, calmer, and more radiant than ever. And that image starts haunting him, not because he wants to control her again, but because he finally understands that her love was never weak, it was never desperate, it was a gift that required maturity to appreciate, and he wasn't ready. That's how karma works, not through revenge or suffering, but through growth that happens in full view of the one who caused the wound. He watches her evolve into a version of herself that would never settle for the man he was, and he knows she's not coming back, not out of pride, but out of self-preservation. She has new standards now, ones that won't accommodate breadcrumbs or emotional inconsistency. And she didn't raise those standards out of spite, she raised them out of experience. He might attempt a message, a check-in, a just thinking of you, but she doesn't need that validation anymore because her peace is no longer tied to his presence. It's in the way she wakes up with clarity. It's in how she makes choices that prioritize her joy. And in that, she finds closure, without needing to reopen the door. In the end, her glow-up isn't just physical, it's emotional, it's spiritual. It's the result of surviving what tried to break her and turning it into fuel. And for the man who thought she'd never walk away, that's a lesson he'll carry for the rest of his life. Because the version of her he let slip away, the one who still believed in his potential, doesn't exist anymore. What remains is a woman who knows her worth too deeply to ever offer it to someone who doesn't. When a good woman is hurt by someone she gave her heart to, the story doesn't end in devastation, it begins with transformation. She doesn't chase revenge, doesn't lower herself to bitterness. Instead, she rises. She grows. She becomes even more aligned with who she's meant to be. And in that rise, the man who once had her love begins to feel the full weight of what he lost. Not because she tried to make him feel it, but because she no longer needs him to. That's the most powerful shift of all. The moment she stops needing closure, stops needing answers, and simply reclaims her power. While he may spend his time haunted by what could have been, she's too busy building what will be. Her silence is no longer pain, it's peace. Her distance is no longer rejection, it's protection. And her evolution is no longer about proving anything. It's just the natural result of a heart that refused to stay broken. That's karma. Not loud, not cruel, just undeniable.